Welcome to Aircrew Interview. I'm Mike and your host. In this episode we chat to the 2021 RAF Typhoon display pilot James Sainty. In the first half, Sainty shares his early beginnings in aviation, going through flying training, being selected to fly the Typhoon, the simulator, DACT and more. In the second half, Sainty shares how he became the 2021 display pilot, how the routine is created, his favourite manoeuvres and shows, his most memorable moment and connecting with the public. We wrap up with some questions from our patrons and some personal ones from myself. So if you like what we do here and would like to support the channel, you can do this by donating monthly at patreon.com/aircrewinterview. Thank you and enjoy. So Sainty, when did you first become interested in aviation?
So I was 9 years old at the Sunderland Air Show. My father took me to see the aircraft displaying there. I saw the Red Arrows and the Harrier displaying and absolutely hooked from that point on.
So what year did you actually join the Air Force?
I joined the Air Force in 2009. I actually joined the Air Cadets when I was 13 and then that hooked me into aviation. Following the Sunderland Air Show, I was advised by the careers office to join the Air Cadets at 13, but officially I joined the Royal Air Force 2009, age 18 years old.
Nice one. So can you talk us through some of the aircraft you started training on?
Yeah, sure. So the first aircraft I ever flew was as an Air Cadet. It was the Grob Vigilant at RAF Topcliffe. Did a little bit of time on the Grob Tutor at RAF Leeming. But once I was in the Air Force, obviously the training system I went through would have been the Grob Tutor at RAF Whitton with 57 Squadron. I was then streamed fast jets to fly the Tucano on 72 Squadron at RAF Linton on Ouse. And then from there I was Course 7 on the new Hawk T2 with the military flying training system at RAF Valley, which was 4 Squadron. From there I was very fortunate to be streamed to the Typhoon to 29 Squadron to conduct the operational conversion unit.
So can you talk us through some of your flying training?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I was sent to RAF Whitton to fly on 57 Squadron, the Grob Tutor. I got approximately 60 to 70 hours there, and that's basically where you cut your teeth flying wise. So you do a little bit of low-level circuits first, go first solo, do a little bit of low-level navigation, a bit of formation flying, a bit of instrument flying, so we get an instrument sort of pseudo instrument rating on the Grob Tutor, so we're exposed to what it's like flying in cloud. And at that point there, they score your performances on every sortie, and at the end of the training they rank the course in order, and then the sort of top third will be streamed to fast jet, middle third go to rotary, and then the bottom third go to multi-engine. But there is a little bit of leeway in there. If you don't want to go fast jet and you want to go to multis, then you can select that as well, or tell them your preferences, so they do listen to your preferences as well. So that was my initial training. I was then very lucky to be streamed to fast jet to conduct basic fast jet training at RAF Linton on Ouse on 72 Squadron, lovely place next to York. There I did about 110 hours on the Tucano, and again it's very similar start. You start off going for the first solo, you do some circuit training, and then you get into instrument flying. And then at that point there, you're now into the low-level environment, flying low-level navigation, formation flying, formation aerobatics, culminating in kind of an end-of-course check where you do kind of a climb to height, join the airways, fly to a certain location, maybe Scotland, enter low-level, fly low-level, land somewhere like Prestwick, turn the jets there, and then do exactly the same on the way back. And at the end, you find out whether you've got your wings or not. So from there, I was then sent to RAF Valley on the Hawk T2. So one of the first courses, Course 7, to fly the new trainer with 4 Squadron for the military flying training system. Brand new building, brand new simulators, all shiny when I arrived. And there you do what's called the basic phase. So I believe that's now it's 25 Squadron. At the time it was called Air Flight with myself. And there you learn to fly the Hawk, you convert to the Hawk, and you used to, on that squadron, on Air Flight, learn the sort of basics of fighter manoeuvring, so how we dogfight. But I believe that's now moved to 4 Squadron on the tactical weapons side. Once you've been converted to the Hawk, you then move on to the tactical weapons side, so it was B Flight when I was there. So tactical weapons training, from there you're looking at doing some sort of work with the radar. So the T2 is sort of cutting edge with its technology, so it has a data link. So the data links between all the Hawks can speak to each other and give you a synthetic kind of radar picture, so you can practice all the profiles that we do on the Typhoon, but without actually having a real radar. And then from there, at the end, you then find out where you've been role disposed once you've completed that training. So at the time it was Tornado GR4 or the Typhoon for myself. I was streamed to Typhoon. I believe at this time now they are using obviously the Typhoon or the F-35.
So did you always want to go into the Typhoon, or did you have another type in mind?
So when I was at Sunderland Airshow, I was amazed by the capabilities of the Harrier. The way that, yeah, exactly, the way it could hover and the way it could maneuver, it was really cool. So from the early stages I did want to fly the Harrier, but unfortunately obviously it went out of service in 2010, so after that I definitely set my sights on the Eurofighter Typhoon.
Brilliant. Cool. Can you talk us through some of your ground training on the Typhoon?
Yeah, so every student will start 29 Squadron in we call it the Typhoon training facility with BAE Systems. In there you will do a full sort of 6 weeks ground school package. That includes things like looking at the systems, so the fuel systems, the avionics, how the jet is built, how the engines function. You then move on to sort of malfunctions, so how you would deal with certain emergency situations in the aircraft, and then you move into the simulator. So the first few simulator sorties are flown with the civilian staff, who are normally all ex-military pilots and navigators. At that point there, once you've learned all your checks off by heart and you've flown a few of the sorties, the QFIs or the flying instructors from 29 Squadron will then come over and start your official convex phase, which is the conversion to the Typhoon. And actually, interestingly, you do your first solo check in the simulator, and your first flight is by yourself in a single seat fighter.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So what was the sim like? Because it looks like a big video game.
So actually the Eurofighter sims are at the moment being upgraded to, we call it TFST.
Yep.
The current sims at the moment, we have what's called full mission simulators. So they are full 360-degree domes with an actual cockpit in there that flies exactly like the aircraft. We have one half dome, which is again similar, just with a half a dome. And then we have what we call EDCTs. They are part task trainers, so they're really good for practicing checks and also emergency procedures.
So can you talk us through your first takeoff? What was it like kicking in them reheats for the first time?
Yeah, I remember, well, I was flying with a guy called Brucey. It was in a two-seater, because back when I went through the operation conversion unit, we used to have a lot more two-seater aircraft. I remember we used to select 70% power on the runway. We let the engines wind up, and at that point they released the brakes, and I thought, Christ, this is accelerating really fast. The instructor in the back, Brucey, goes, Sainty, you need to select max power at that point. So I was, oh, I'm not actually at max dry.
Whoa.
And then the actual profile we're flying was a performance takeoff, which you've probably seen at RAF Typhoon. So I had to then select reheat, and at that point there, a bit like the Fast and the Furious, when he presses the NOS button, everything went blurry pretty quickly. Before I knew it, I was having to rotate on the stick and get airborne in I don't know, 3 seconds. It felt like at the time.
So yeah, what is the takeoff speed? Because there must be a limit for the gear to come up.
So the takeoff speed is dictated by the stores that the aircraft are flying with. So obviously with more weight on it, the faster we need to go to get airborne. Typically for a training mission, if you do visit RAF Coningsby, we are looking to rotate, if we're using dry power, at about 155 knots, but if you're using reheat, then we actually rotate at 130 knots.
So you mentioned before that people have choices. How likely was it like people didn't want to go fast jet? Surely everyone wanted to go fast jet.
On my course, actually, on elementary flying training, there was a guy who was ex-army, and he was massively interested in flying rotary. So there was a few of them, a friendship group that actually wanted to fly Chinooks. So they all put rotary as their first choices, and they were successful in getting streamed to rotary. So they were all very happy on the streaming night. A big party that night in the bar.
I bet.
Yeah.
So what was your first operational squadron?
So my first operational squadron was 6th Squadron, the can openers at RAF Lossiemouth. I did 4 years up there, up in Scotland, and it was an amazing time. I was very fortunate with my career. I'm sure we'll talk about it later on, but I was fortunate to go to Red Flag twice. I did 2 tours in the Falklands. I went to Oman twice on exercise Magic Carpet, and also I was fortunate enough to be deployed with 1 squadron to Trilat with the F-35s and the French Rafales, sorry, the F-22s and the French Rafales in Langley. And whilst also on 6th Squadron, I did 2 operational tours or deployments to Op Shader out of Akatiri in Iraq and Syria.
Doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate.
So can you talk a bit about DACT in the
it happens on occasions. I'd like to do more of it, but it's where we get airborne with intent to do some visual manoeuvring with another aircraft type. So during the OCU we'll fly Typhoon v Typhoon. There are incidences of flying against the Hawks, but normally we usually fly against Red Typhoon. So the DACT allows us to fly with dissimilar aircraft with dissimilar tactics, to obviously train ourselves to see different pictures. So I was fortunate enough in Langley to fly against the F-22 and the RAF Al with the French Air Force. I also, on my first red flag when I was a junior pilot, was fortunate enough to fly against an F-16 from the Aggressor Squadron out there at Nellis Air Force Base. The Typhoon is primarily designed as a rate fighter. So if I was to merge with another aircraft, I'm going to try and take what we call the Fight 2 circle. So he'll be flying on his circle or her, and I'll be flying on my circle, and I'm going to try and get around that circle as fast as I can, because the Typhoon is designed to be very powerful, 40,000 pounds of thrust from its two AJ200s, and it's designed to put a lot of G and get around that circle very quickly. For example, if I was to fight something like the F-18, that is designed to be a high angle of attack fighter, an alpha fighter, so he wants to take me single circle, which means he wants to turn his circle, he wants to have a smaller circle than mine, so he can turn inside me and shoot me. The good thing about the Typhoon is, with all that excess power that we have and the rate band that we fly in, combined with our flight control system, so the flight control system is carefree handling, so I do not have to worry about pulling the control column fully back and overstressing the jet. So my immediate action at any merge is to select full reheat, let the reheat light, and then pull full back stick, snapping immediately to 9G. At that point there, if I have my helmet mounted sighted system, which is world class, I can then look over my shoulder and keep my head there so I can stay tally the whole time. I don't have to keep referencing the head-up display. Another advantage of the HMSS is also I can bring my weapon system into the head-up display, into my HMSS, and lock up the target that I'm fighting and shoot him from over my shoulder. So gone are the days where I actually have to get behind someone to be able to shoot them down, which is absolutely amazing.
So Sainty, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the Typhoon?
So as I've already mentioned, strengths, we have a phenomenal amount of power.
Yeah.
So the two Rolls-Royce engines, when I light those reheat, I'm burning 600 kilograms of fuel a minute, but I've got 40,000 pounds of thrust. Obviously, as I climb higher, they become more efficient, so I'll save fuel. So I would say the ability to have that much power with the flight control system limiting my G so I can't overstress it, and that how easy the aircraft is to fly with all automatics, means that I can focus on fighting the person or the opponent I'm fighting rather than flying the aircraft, which makes my job a lot easier. The Typhoon is a phenomenal swing roll aircraft, so we now have a full suite of air-to-surface weapons from Project Centurion, from taking over from the Tornado. At the moment we are going through an upgrade which should be coming in 2025 to upgrade our radar, so I'd say once we get radar 2, I can't fault the aircraft in any way.
So how do other nations or pilots view the Typhoon?
So we have a few exchange officers flying on 29 Squadron. So one of the guys is an F-22 pilot who was actually on the 94th when I was out there at Langley. He flies the Typhoon, and I think they're just absolutely astounded by the power that the jet has and the ability to pull 9G. He also raves actually quite a lot about the anti-G system that we have in the Typhoon. So he says that the full coverage G pants that we wear, the jacket that we have, and then the pressure breathing that comes through our mask, it all inflates to be able to allow me, look, I'm built like a beanstalk, so not designed for G. It allows me to sit there and only have to do minimal straining at 9G, which is incredible.
So obviously you're here in your black suit, you became the 2021 display pilot. Can you tell us how this came about?
Yeah, so I started on the OCU Operational Conversion Unit as an instructor initially in 2019. Every year they'll do a selection process for the new Typhoon display pilot. So initially you register interest with the boss, you send him an application form talking a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you want to be the Typhoon display pilot. From that list, they will shortlist to, for my season there was 4 people, and then you'll go into the simulator with the previous display season pilot, and you'll fly a section of someone's display. So mine was Ryan Lawton's from 2017. From there, they'll kind of grade you on how well you flew that. You'll fly the sequence twice, and they might throw a couple of injects in there to see how you react, for example, like an emergency whilst you're pointing at the crowd. From there, you'll then go into an interview with the station commander, the squadron boss, the warrant officer in there as well, who's obviously questioning about your discipline, a scary man, and the previous display pilot as well. And they'll ask you a plethora of questions for about half an hour. And at the end, they'll have a meeting who they think they'll select. And I actually last year was in the Falklands. I just did my interview. That weekend I was flying down to Falklands for my 8-week stint down there. And during my first week on isolation down there, I got a call from the boss saying I'd been selected. So it certainly made the isolation go a lot quicker.
Yeah, how did that feel? Like getting that call? That must have been like, get in.
Well, initially he wound me up and said the way he was talking to me was if I hadn't been successful, and then he dropped it saying, "No, you're gonna have a busy year then, so you better get ready." And yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal. I had to go down we had this gymnasium where we had our food and a couple of beers, so definitely opened a can that night to celebrate.
Nice one. So who comes up with the routine?
So the routine is designed by the pilot of that season. The Typhoon has a limited number of manoeuvres that we are safely allowed to do, which are prescribed in our regulations. And from there you will pick manoeuvres that you'd like to fly, put them into a sequence, and then you'd practice it in the simulator before we fly it live. The sequence itself, for myself, I had a lot of time obviously in isolation in the Falklands, so I went into YouTube and watched a lot of the old season displays. So you'll see from my display a little bit of Squadron Leader Long's display, a little bit of Jim P's display, and a little bit of Ryan's display, and then add a little bit myself in when I was designing it. We'll then come back to the UK. We will obviously, like I say, do it in the simulator to make sure you have enough time and fuel to be able to get through the full sequence, and then you'll fly it live. So you'll do 6 display practices at 5,000 feet, you'll do 6 at 1,500 feet, 6 at 1,000 before you're finally allowed down into low level. We use 500 feet as our minimum for aerobatics, 300 feet for rolling, no more than 60 degrees angle bank, and then we can go down to 100 feet for our high speed passes, and we're a limited 20 degrees angle bank at the lowest, but 100 feet at 600 miles an hour is pretty impressive.
I can imagine.
So it focuses the mind.
I can imagine, yeah. So is there much banter between, like, you know, the past air display pilots, like, oh, I'm better than you, or anything like that?
No, absolutely not. No, it's all very professional and humble. I'd say the past display pilots want you to have a successful year, and they want you to have an amazing routine. So they get heavily involved in like the kind of sequence design in the early stages to try and make your display really good. So actually they're there to mentor you more than banter you. Obviously we have banter between each other in other scenarios. In terms of international sort of display pilots, I was fortunate enough to meet the French Rafale display pilot out there, and there's always just the standard French versus English banter, etc. Yeah, but it's all very amicable, and it's all very kind of complementary of each other.
So you kind of alluded before, but can you just go into a bit more detail about the flying training for the display?
Yeah, the flying training. So, like I say, you'll start off at 5,000 feet. You'll fly your display. So I would go to the north coast of the Wash near Holbridge Range, and I'd use that as a line feature. So we obviously, when we fly our displays, we do it to a line. I would pick a feature on the ground. It was one of the factories down there, and I'd use that as my datum point. So the datum is the middle of the air display. So if you're at an air display and you're sat in the middle, you'll be in the middle of the whole routine itself. From there you then come to the airfield at 1,500 feet, and you slowly work your way down. So initially at 5,000 feet you're focusing on the gate height and speed techniques, so you're making sure that you can fly the manoeuvres safely and are action in the profile that when you pull through you've got enough height and speed, low speed to be able to make the manoeuvre, simulating a ground level of 5,000 feet. And then once you get down to 1,500 feet and you're in the overhead of the airfield, you're then looking at getting the lines right. So we have an A axis, which is the line or the crowd line. We have a B axis, which is 90 degrees to that, and then between the two we have 45-degree angles as well. So you're looking to try and nail those sort of axes.
So can you talk us through PDA for yourself?
Yeah, PDA was, I actually, incredibly for PDA for myself, it was fortuitous that I actually got my 1,000 hours in the Typhoon.
Oh, wow.
As I did my display break from my PDA. So yeah, so the approval officer for all our displays is AOC One Group. So he will give us the permission to display in front of the public. So he makes sure he's the final safety stop to make sure that the display is safe but also effective as well. So we do it with BBMF at Coningsby. So we kind of run a day before. We'll do a practice where we do a kind of pseudo air show where the BBMF Spitfire Hurricane and the Dakota will go up in time slots, and then I'll give him my time slot. And yeah, he will then at the end of that grant us as a signed piece of paper with his signature at the bottom saying that, yeah, Sainty, you're approved for the 2021 display season to go to the air shows and display safely.
A few beers after that?
Oh yeah, we had a few beers after that, absolutely. So it's all about the team as well. So behind me I've got a huge network of support from the engineers. So in the office where we sit, we've got a senior engineering officer, an engineering manager, James Pavitt. We've got a Typhoon display manager, which was James Hodgson. It's now Holly who's replaced him. And then we have our kind of social media reps, which is Bev. You'll see him all over Instagram and Facebook. And now we have a guy called Adam Fletcher, who's now our kind of movements, logistics, and he is now taking over Corporal Bevan's job, who's now moved back to the front line. So yeah, when you do the PDA, actually what took me was how happy and excited everyone was on the team as well for us actually getting our PDA, and straight from there we obviously went out and had a drink to celebrate, which was good.
So it's certainly not a one-man band then?
Absolutely not. So that's the core team in the office, but when I deploy on displays throughout the UK, I always take an engineering team as well. So the engineering team, there's 3 of them: Phantom, Tornado and Lightning. They are made up of engineers who work on the squadron, all the way from your AV technicians, so your avionics, your mechanical and your armourers as well, because obviously we have an ejection seat that needs servicing, and also any sort of fuel tanks or stores we're carrying, they've got live cartridges on there as well to blow them off in an emergency. So yeah, it's a huge team. And then obviously with that engineering team needs support from logistics, so we need to get all our equipment out there. So we've got the logistics section, MT, they do all the driving the vehicles, air traffic, you know, and then at the end, at the industry level as well, we've got BAE, Leonardo, Squadron Prince, Breitling. These are all sort of companies that support the team when we're out there on the season.
Yeah, because you're like, yeah, it was all over social media. Your helmet was really cool there, that Breitling on the back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, interestingly, we got that designed. James Pavitt, my engineering manager, designed it. I gave him my initial sort of thoughts of what I'd like, and then they sent it to a company that actually paints Lewis Hamilton's.
No way.
Lewis Hamilton's racing car driver helmet, obviously, and he did that for us, which was really cool. With like Breitling on the back and the Union flag all over it. So
what does the Typhoon do well and not so well in a display?
So the Typhoon is incredibly capable at staying close to the crowd because it's manoeuvrability and it's carefree handling. So you'll never see the Typhoon get more than 2 miles away, which means 1, you can see it, and 2, you can see all the contrails that it produces, and 3, it's very, very loud. If you've been to a Typhoon display, you'll definitely hear it. So the things that we try and sort of showcase for the Typhoon display is its ability to accelerate. So you'll see it slow down to 120 miles an hour. You'll see us light the reheat, accelerate up in the vertical, come back down towards the crowd, and in that 15-second gap, I've gone from 120 miles an hour to in excess of 500 miles an hour, which is incredible. Yeah. What doesn't do so well? Well, let's just look at the kind of F-22 and flanker displays. It doesn't have thrust vectoring, so you don't get that incredible, almost unbelievable nose rotation that you see when the flanker's doing backflips. The Typhoon can't do that. It wasn't designed to do that. I'd say that was yeah, one of the things that it would be awesome to have thrust vectoring on Typhoon, but the sheer noise power, G-force that it can produce is just incredible.
And each year, is there 1 or 2 manoeuvres you keep in to, you know, like kind of give the Typhoon its kind of signature? I always think of the last, you know, the aileron rolls. The
Typhoon only has a limited amount of manoeuvres that are actually allowed to do in a certain sequence. Obviously, we put the sequence together as the display pilot. The manoeuvres you'll see, the display is designed with a beginning, middle and an end. So you'll always see some slow speed pass with high angle attack. You'll always see a little bit of gear down action, and you'll always see, normally, if you're not landing at a display venue, the incredible climb performance of the Typhoon as we do the display break. So I know last year's display pilot Jim P did it on the A axis in front of you going up, whereas I actually would come in on the B axis 90 degrees to the crowd to pull up in front of you. But the reason I did it was because of the new livery that we have this year. So you can see the underside is the belly as I pull up, and then I'll just aileron roll until I run out of airspeed or airspace.
And obviously it's called Blackjack. Who came up with that name, or was it on social media people just kind of tagged it in?
Yeah, so we took ZJ914 and we came up with a concept that, or we were directed that this year we're going to fly the flag, so you want the Union flag as much as possible, so you'll see it on my helmet and on the jet. Mr. Adam Johnson, who's a enthusiast, he came up with the initial sort of designs. He would draw it up for us in collaboration with the team. Then we would send that up to the chain of command, who would give it the approval, came back down to us, and then Serco in the paint bay produced the goods and painted the jet itself. When it pulled out the hangar on the day we revealed it, it was an incredible moment because it looks awesome. I like to refer to it sometimes as the Austin Powers jet because there's so many flags on it. But yeah, Blackjack came about from, I believe it was social media, and it just kind of stuck. So black jet with the Union flag on it, Blackjack, I mean it sticks, has a good rhythm. Yeah, it's nice, yeah, it's good.
So what are the trickiest display sites?
So my first display was at the Midlands Air Festival, and that is a tricky site. So I think that was the first time they've actually had a fast jet there, because it's usually for balloons, etc. So it was a really nice estate, Ragley Hull. Big sort of open sort of area with just loads of forest, like really tall trees, the tallest trees I've ever seen. And the display line itself was in kind of a bowl, so it was actually a late spot, but fortunate enough on the Typhoon we have great avionics, so we can use the display and the head-up display to line up even if I can't see the display site. But once you're into that display arena, it is all visual, normally out of the window looking for your datum and the lines, etc. And that was really tricky because it didn't have a runway, it didn't have a coastline, it just had some buoys or some markers in a field surrounded by forest, so it's tricky. I went with Jim P to the simulator before flying at that venue to have a look at it, and the simulator does replicate the area quite well, so I was actually quite well prepared arriving there, but I'd say that was the trickiest one from the 2021 season.
Do you have a favourite manoeuvre yourself?
Yeah, I like the slow speed pass because I'm nose really high, and actually it's the first time in the display where I can look down and see all the faces looking up and see how big the crowd is. And then at the point I get in front of the crowd, I light the reheat and I'm just pinned against the seat as it accelerates up into 70 degrees nose up for the half Cuban, and that absolutely every time leaves my stomach behind me. It's brilliant.
Never gets old, I'm guessing.
Never gets old, no.
So how do you find interacting with the public at these air shows?
Yeah, so we have a public relations team as well. That's one of the ones I actually missed out for my last list, so apologies. Yeah, public relations are huge for the display. So we have Sergeant David Holmes, he's our PR manager. He has a team of all volunteers, and these can be across the Air Force at RF Coningsby that deploy on the shows with us. So you'll have seen either the tent or the trailer that we take to all the events. They are the public face at these air show venues for the display team. And then I will try to factor in, if I can, a little bit of time to come down and meet the public, sign some autographs. And just from my experience at Sunderland Air Show, being inspired by the Red Arrows and the Harrier, my aim is to inspire the next generation. So the young children that come up with their flying suits on, if they're in red flying suits or black flying suits, is brilliant because they just are so keen and want to, and we give them lots of free stuff as well, like balls and key rings, etc. And we just want to inspire them to maybe get into aviation when they get older.
So obviously it's been a tricky year, but do you have a favourite air show you flew at?
I would have loved to have flown at Sunderland Air Show this year because it's a hometown show. But no, I don't actually have a favourite because they're all different in their own ways and they'll bring their own unique sort of quirks. So I had a brilliant time at all the venues I flew at this year.
So have you had a favourite moment while displaying the Typhoon?
I think I would say that favourite moment, the moment I remember the most is it was at Bournemouth on one of my evening displays. I'd actually left one of the maps on the combing, and my first time I rolled upside down for the inverted half Cuban as I pushed -3G, the map flew up and it took me by surprise, so I had to do some sort of fly the jet whilst trying to retrieve the map. And then make sure it was safe to continue. That was definitely one of the moments I remember. I think the rest of it is just all the display seasons or the display shows that I did was the feeling of just working as part of the team. So we didn't drop one single display this year. The jet was 100% serviceable for all of the displays that we did, and it's just an incredible feeling to be kind of displaying that jet after all the hard work that's gone on behind the scenes.
So this is from Joe. Sainty, any chance of a North American tour with the Typhoon, please?
So when we get given the display season plan, it's done by our air events team. So we have a team for the Royal Air Force that kind of allocates all the different shows with the different display teams. Obviously got the Falcons, the Red Arrows, the BBMF and the Typhoon. I think I've seen in certain plans there are North American. I think there's some Canada slots there, but whether we get given them, it's up to the hierarchy really. So I'd love to go and display over in North America and Canada, but I can't guarantee that might happen. I know the Reds did that a couple of years back, didn't they? So who knows, it might happen, you never know.
Watch this space.
Yeah, watch this space. I'd love to go.
Exactly. Right, so we've got a couple of personal questions. So do you have any hobbies, obviously apart from aviation?
Yeah, I'm massively into kite surfing. So when it's windy and hopefully warm, not much in the UK, I go down to Hunstanton or to Skegness, depending on the wind direction, take my kites out and go and do a bit of kite surfing, which is good fun. I do a lot of travelling with my other half, Naomi. When we go backpacking, I like to get into scuba diving with her, and yeah, when we're over there it's a lot warmer, we do a lot more kite surfing as well, so yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm going to guess the answer to this, but favourite aircraft you've flown?
Favourite aircraft I've flown is probably the Tucano.
No,
I mean, the Eurofighter is amazing, but the Tucano is kind of, the Eurofighter, you're flying a computer, so you're not actually connected to the controls, it's all fly-by-wire. The Tucano though, you actually get the feedback through the control column, and I don't know, it's just something, because I think I'd flown Vigilant and Glob Tutor, you know, the kind of prop aircraft, piston prop, and then the step up to the Tucano, aged 19, with 1500 horsepower. It was just incredible. I think it was just the feeling of, well, actually I can do aerobatics without descending, whereas the Glob Tutor you'd have to use obviously height. And just being that age and being able to fly something that powerful, it was pretty cool. So I do have fond memories of flying the Tucano, and it's out of Linton on News as well, which was incredible.
It's crazy, like 19 years old, I can't think what I was doing at 19. You were flying the Tucano. But one aircraft you would love to fly?
I think it would be the Spitfire, absolutely. I'd love to fly the Spitfire. It's such an iconic aircraft, isn't it? And I was very fortunate enough to fly Blackjack over the White Cliffs after the Bournemouth Air Festival. So you'll have seen some pictures in the media of the reheating with the Union flag turning towards it, and I had to pinch myself, because you think back in the day in 1940s what the pilots back in then would have thought as they did the same. I think that's such an iconic aircraft, and I think it would be a world-class experience.
Absolutely. So can we find yourself or the team online?
Yeah, so the team have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. If you just type in search engine for the Typhoon Display Team, it's all on there on Google, and then the Instagram page as well, Typhoon Display Team Official. You can follow us on there. And we do post there. We normally do Foon Fridays and pictures on there, and then when we are going to the display sites, there's always story updates and pictures from the team.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Sainty.
My pleasure.